You are listening to the Enormocast.
Does how you get your stuff to the crag really matter that much? Couldn't you just throw it in a hefty bag and sling it over your shoulder, or drag it up the trail to most cliffs just fine? Probably. But as long as we're on about things that don't matter, remember that the sun will eventually atomize the planet and suck it all into a black hole, including that beautiful rack you just finished accumulating. So does anything really matter? Well, disregarding that existential crisis, maybe it's time for a new pack from Black Diamond that looks better, carries better, and just says, I have my shit together. You can trust me. For starters, Black Diamond's Creek 50 has become a legendary all-day crag pack with haul bag durability and a smooth finish. The new Transit series takes the same sleek, no flim-flam design to the streets with tight little packs for your on-foot commute, rolling to the gym, travel, or just running down to the coffee shop to get internet and update your Insta-Face My Tweet tick tube. Black Diamond also has mini packs for long routes, duffels for the gym, big packs for you kitchen sink types, lightweight running and alpine packs. All the packs. And guess what? They even have climbing packs without ice axe loops. Most of us don't need the ice axe loops, you guys. So to get the right packs to do what you want and only what you want from the climbers at Black Diamond, go to blackdiamondequipment.com or your favorite local shop. Hey, it's your toes, back with another bit of advice. Now I know you love them La Sportiva TC Pros. Great for cracks, offwidths, edging and smearing on granite. And TC, well, he's kind of the godfather. A real made man, if you know what I'm saying. So I don't mean any disrespect, Tommy, but when it comes to us little toesies, sometimes it's nice to feel the rock we're grabbing. And though the fingers get all the fun stuff, the full crimping, the half crimping, 3-finger drag crimping, half 4-finger drag crimping, decaf drag with 2 pumps of vanilla crimping. Turns out us toes can push and pull too, just like that old barefoot Chuck. That guy has beautiful crimpy little toes. A little too beautiful, if you're asking me. And we can't have people not buying shoes now, can we, Chuck? Anyway, that's where La Sportiva's reinvented Mantra slipper comes in. The softest, lightest climbing shoe on the market. Thin, comfy, real sensitive. Just like us toes. You know we have a sensitive side too, and we're happy to remind you of the pain we can feel come ice climbing season. So, in the gym, on steep climbing outside, let your toes feel the rock instead of just knocking around in your shoe like a bunch of ripe walnuts. And get us in a pair of Mantras stat. Go to Sportiva.com or your local shop and treat your toes to a pair of Mantras, and maybe, as a special treat, we'll let you keep all your toenails this year. Oh wait, what? It's mantra, not mantra? What's a mantra?
We gotta get
Listen, where you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah, the big
fantastic.
place,
We sold
that
it out.
side of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold
What's
it
that,
out.
20,000
seats?
We really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, La Sportiva, and with support from Maxim Ropes. Maxim has been keeping the Enormocast off the deck since 2012.
And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Cluse. It is August 30th, 2022, about 1 o'clock here in Colorado, and this is episode 248 of the Enormocast, and today I'm talking with Kaya Lindsay, who you may know from her Instagram handle, One Chick Travels, also from the Girls Gone Wide films. She's the filmmaker behind those, and just a presence in the trad climbing world for the last few years. I caught up with Kaya at the International Climbers Festival this summer. It was, in fact, the only interview I did up there that time. I usually do more, but I was kind of busy worrying about my presentation, which actually went okay, despite the tears from my face and from many of the crowd's face. Yeah, I had a good time up there in Lander once again, even though it was a little bit different vibe this time because I was all alone. The entourage stayed home. Everybody's growing up, having kids and shit. And a little bit more mellow. Met a lot of folks. Hope I ran into you up there. And I'll be looking forward to next year. Just keep it going. Keep the train a-going. But before we get to that, I have sort of a PSA. I don't really know how to exactly put this. But what I would like you guys to do is to band together and stop ripping on each other so hard on the internet. Right now, climbing is sort of under attack. A lot of regulations coming down about fixed anchors, about permit systems, and even our own media seems to be hammering us lately about how much we trash everything. And as soon as that starts, it's like all the climbers in the comments are like, yeah, we suck. And yeah, we suck at that. And we live our shit here. And we shouldn't bolt everything. And we shouldn't do this. And we are awful. Like, really, it's fucking bizarre. You guys, like, take it easy. Okay? Keep it to yourself. Like, yeah, we do not have a perfect record. We have our problems. But by and large, we take care of the world around us. Okay? I've seen some trash shit, and it ain't climbers that are doing it, okay? You can take thousands of climbers and put them in one place, and they may trample some shit, but they don't leave trash around for the most part. If they did, it was probably by mistake, okay? We do not run rampant through these communities causing problems, despite the sort of media propaganda that's going on around that. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't exactly know how to say this, but like, we're on the same team. Okay, so we do not need to publicly be hammering each other, despite the fact that once in a while, some wingnut bolts some petroglyphs. All right? It's fringe cases. It does not reflect on what most people think within the climbing community when stuff like that happens. We're snarky, we're privileged, all that stuff. I get it. You know, and some guy stashes a rope or some bivy gear and then is like too lazy to go get it, and then it's wintertime and it's over and they never come back. They shouldn't do that. It's lame. And then a bunch of other climbers clean it up once a year, annually, at an event that they created. We are a good, solid user group in the outdoors, despite our infringements. To listen to the media, even from our climbing media, places like Indian Creek are some sort of hellscape of trash and shit and trampled cryptobiotic soil. Just like, basically like a nuclear bomb went off. It's not like that. It's beautiful. There's some trails. We stay on the trails. We shit in the shitters. Like, it's not the end of the world that people are parking on the side of the road. Okay? And it's just like, it's like driving me nuts. When my friend from Spain first went to Indian Creek, he couldn't believe how clean it was. And he's a climber. You know, compared to many of the climbing areas in Spain, he was just like blown away. There was no trash anywhere. Okay, there's a freaking piece of tape here and there, or somebody's shopping bag blew away, okay? Or they put their beer down and forgot the can there. Like, yeah, there's a few things. Even when we have cleanups here in Rifle, like, there used to be this game that we would try to play where, you know, the person who turned in the most trash would win some sort of prize. And like, you had to dig around in the bushes, and what you were finding was other people's trash, not climber trash, okay? You were out there picking up, you know, Bud Light cans in the river and like, you know, cig butts. Maybe a couple climbers still smoke, but that wasn't from climbers, okay? It was like, yeah, we found a little bit of tape here and there and some duct tape from somebody's knee pad that, you know, is gray and it rolled under a rock and they couldn't see it. Like, that's it. And here's the problem. When we add to this media, when we back it up, when we say, yeah, they're right, other people looking in, land managers looking in, non-climbers from the outside get this impression that we're just all these raucous party animals that are trashing everything around us. And we know that is not true, okay? We know we do not leave campsites trashed. We do not leave the base of crags trashed, okay? There's some erosion because it gets used a lot. That's different. That's not intentional. And yeah, we're all out there climbing on petroglyphs like a bunch of crazy people because it happened one time. Anyway, just chill out. Don't post your little beef because you once saw somebody like break a beer bottle around a campfire because they were drunk. All right. Anyway. Yeah, that didn't come out the way I wanted it. But you get what I'm talking about. Okay, let's talk about Kaya. I was excited to sit down finally with Kaya. I sat down in her van. I have followed her for years on Instagram. I've watched her evolve, not just as sort of a van lifer Instagram person, but also as a climber. I think she and her crew of women have changed the way we look at women trad climbers a little bit. It's changed the way we look at offwidth climbing quite a lot, actually. And the thing about them in general is that they bring good vibes and fun to not just trad climbing, but this kind of formerly dark world of like offwidth climbing. They just bring a good time. And it sort of harkens back to, the eras before when climbing was not quite so serious. We weren't training quite as much. We weren't, debating all the little ins and outs quite as much. And I know I can do that. So I'm part of that crew. But anyway, it was great to sit down with Kaya. She's got an interesting story. She was an early van lifer before it became kind of a meme and maybe a little bit derogatory to call somebody that. But she's risen beyond that, expanded herself, and I think she's become a great contributing member of the community. So here we go. Conversation with climber Kaya Lindsay. So we've never met until today.
We've never met until today.
Even though we banter a bit on the old Instagram,
the social media.
Yeah. And it's funny because you spend so much time in some of my old haunts.
Yeah.
That a lot of times I feel like I sort of do know you when we're talking on there because we talk, a little bit about the sort of strikes and gutters of being out there and the life and all that sort of thing, which is makes it interesting. And I don't know when I first noticed you or followed you on Instagram, but I'm sure it was with there was probably you hadn't differentiated yourself from a ton of sort of fan account climbers that I was following. But then it seemed like you kind of, I don't know, you had a different vibe that I thought was interesting, which maybe we'll be able to get to in this. And also you just have been doing it a while.
Yeah.
And sticking with it.
Yeah.
And you've had your ups and downs with it, and there's been some drama and things like that, which is, so you've actually created something of a story that's been captivating to follow.
Thank you.
And, captivating enough like that you're, whatever Instagram decides to give you, all of a sudden when your stuff comes up, it's like whatever game that is. So, but yeah, so it's kind of interesting because I just kind of want to know everything. I just want to chat about everything. Like
we can do that.
Where you came from, what you're doing. I mean, what the great stuff about this is, what's the stuff that makes you down.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's, I think, interesting is that it seems pretty common to have women traveling by themselves in climbing these days, but it's relatively new movement.
Yeah.
Not that it didn't happen, but it was pretty rare to be just on the road. Not obviously, I'm going from Indian Creek to meet my boyfriend or whoever.
Yeah.
But like your just whole mission is out here alone. Yeah. So the kind of ups and downs of that would be really cool. So, but if you want to start where you started.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from, Santa Cruz, California. Okay. I'm from a little beach town in California, and not many rocks in my childhood. I think I did go climbing at Pacific Edge, which is also where Chris Sharma started rock climbing. So we have that in common.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what you were saying earlier about how we kind of frequent the same haunts. I was thinking about how all trad climbers they kind of have a similar vibe and are interested in similar things and suffer similar, issues and failures. So yeah, I got really into trad climbing a couple years ago, and I feel like that has been kind of my journey into I don't know, creating a more interesting story of my life, just becoming who I am as a person. I think that transformative experience is what trad climbing can offer people. And I know that sounds a little silly, but I think that's like the root of it for me. Like I was doing this like van life thing, and trad climbing was always the thing that made it worth doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Like the van was only ever just a vehicle to like do climbing more. And
Right.
It was like it was a pretty picture, and it got me a lot of places, but both literally and metaphorically. But yeah, like the drive and the thread of everything that I've been trying to do was focused around climbing.
How did you figure out that you could just get in a van and leave?
Just get in a van and go.
I mean, how old were you?
I think I was 22
Right.
when I first discovered the concept of van life.
Right.
I'm 29 now, and I had been climbing in the gym for a long time, like bouldering in the gym. That was always my passion. And I met this girl who just like casually told me one day, she's like, yeah, I'm going to buy a van and move into it for the summer. I'm going to go down to Bishop and just boulder. And that was like my lightning moment. Like I felt like I was struck by lightning, because I was just like, oh my God, you can just do that. You can just move into your van and go rock climbing. And so like from that point forward, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move into my van. I'm going to go rock climbing. Like I'm going to save money on rent. I'm going to have this like cool, like free life experience. And so I worked for about a year after that, saved up a bunch of money, and then bought a Sprinter van, this one that we're actually sitting in right now, and started building it out with my then partner at the time. We hit the road and did like a 2-month road trip, and then he kind of like decided it wasn't for him, and we ended up breaking up after that, and I bought him out of his half of the van, and then I hit the road on my own. Yeah, the first place that I went was Joshua Tree, because I had known that there was climbing there, but like at that time, I think trad climbing was still this like really abstract concept. Like it wasn't really something that I understood as something I could do. So it was mostly bouldering. And I went to Climber Coffee there and met this girl, Genevieve, who lives in a camper to this day. And she has this big white dog, Sailor. And I met her, and she just like casually invited me to Indian Creek, to Creek Pasture, which was like, another 2,000 miles east of where we were or something like that. And I just like had never really left home before. I'd never really left the state before on my own. A long road trip driving on my own I'd never done. And I just decided to go and meet her at Creek Pasture Campground in 2 weeks. And I remember the craziest thing for me growing up in California was driving through Utah and being like, where are all the cars? Like there's just like nobody here.
Right.
Like, the emptiness of that state just like blew me away. But yeah, I showed up and she was not there, which was a little bit scary. And, I slept a fitful night in my van in the group parking area in the back of Creek Pasture Campground. And the next morning I woke up and walked to the Creek Pasture message board and saw that someone was looking for partners, Sarah. I think the bravest thing I ever did was I walked up to her campsite and was like, hey, I can't trad climb, but I can belay. And do you want to go rock climbing today? And she could have just told me to like stuff it and no, I'm not going to teach you how to trad climb. But she was like, yeah, sure. Why not? I see her around every once in a while. Right. She's like a rope access worker now.
Okay.
Her and her partner. So she like does seasonal stuff. And every once in a while I see her and I'm like, Sarah, you changed my life. And she's like, great. She's like, for her, it was just a weekend of climbing. And for me, it was like transformative.
I mean, as you left, what'd you leave behind?
Well,
I mean, the ex, obviously. What did you have any sort of life that had any interest for you that you were sort of driving away from?
I mean, in a way, like I had nothing left because the breakup that we had was pretty encompassing. It was kind of one of those breakups where like, we break up and he torched all of my other relationships in the process.
Sure.
And so I actually, I lost my friend group and my climbing partners and like my community. And, I was planning on leaving to go rock climbing. So there were a little bit of me cutting ties as well. And it was kind of like, I just was like, well, I don't have anything to stick around for, you know? And I don't want to trash him because, you know, he's not a bad guy, but it was, you know, just like
it happens that way sometimes.
Yeah. Just the relationship ended in a pretty bad, well, I mean, you know, yeah, it just ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ended and I didn't really have a lot to stick around for. And so I was really in a space where I was looking for something to fill the void. And like, I had this idea that it would be rock climbing, but I didn't really know. Like, I didn't know what rock climbing was. And I basically spent 11 days in Indian Creek straight climbing every day. I really think of those 11 days as like a before and after. I basically came out of the desert having led my first trad climb, which was the South Six Shooter. And I was kind of like, well, this is my life now. My priorities are different. I'm a different person. I don't care about the things I cared about before. Like, this is it. And that's basically what I did for the next 4 years straight.
Yeah, so I mean, it was that stark in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was literally like Kaya, those 11 days in Indian Creek or in Creek Pasture Campground, and then Kaya post.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Kaya immediately post. That meant staying down in Moab, or were you traveling around a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, like at that point I had drank the Kool-Aid and I was in it.
Yeah.
But I still had like, I was working remotely on the road. And so I still had like jobs to do. At the time I had branded myself as like a social media marketer freelance. So I was like running people's like companies' social media pages. So that was something I could do from the road.
Right.
But yeah, so I was going back into cell service. I had like a friend's wedding to go to, like just like there were a little bit of ties that hadn't completely severed yet that I was, addressing. And I was also like really naive about my time. And I just had this thought that I could like, bounce around to 8 different places in a month or something. And so I think like directly after those 11 days, I like went back to California to visit my family and then like went to Yosemite. Oh, I did. I went to Yosemite because my friend Allison Kaplan, who I love very much, decided to teach me how to trad climb. Like I met her in Indian Creek on those 11 days and she, out of the kindness of her heart was just like, yeah, I'll teach you how to trad climb, like come to Yosemite. And I like bivvied in the employee I slept in my van.
Right.
I slept in my van in the employee parking lots for a couple weeks. And, she took me up all the classics. I ended up doing like, the biggest achievement of my life at that point was Royal Arches. And I did that at the end of my trip there. And I was like, wow, I can trad climb. Like, I know how to do this. And she has some really good stories about when I was trying to learn. The very first multi-pitch she took me up on, I untied at the top. And then the second multi-pitch she took me on, I didn't know how to place gear. So I just made I put like a bad piece in and then connected that directly to my harness. And then I belayed her off of my harness to get up. So we really had like a long way to go as far as like teaching how to rock climb went. But yeah, that was kind of the next stop. And like, I remember during that time, my capacity for joy, I had never experienced like such a depth of joy before. Like I literally remember feeling like I didn't know I could be this happy and like this content just in everyday life.
Yeah.
And that for me was like the thing that trad climbing and like, living on the road and meeting people like really gave me, was that like before I felt like I was doing this kind of like up and down, up and down, up and down, and now I was like 10 times higher than I'd ever been emotionally, which was just like crazy. So yeah, that's kind of where it went.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about the improvement. I mean, how did you was it just now that you had the skills to go and do routes and start learning more on your own, or was there still a series of mentors or groups of people that were able to kind of keep getting you the skills you needed? Because Royal Archers, good job.
Yeah.
But we got to get you up to speed a little bit more.
Yeah.
A little bit more.
I feel really lucky because majority of my mentors in climbing have been women, which is like, I know not common, like very, very rare. But yeah, like the first woman that ever, or person that ever took me trad climbing was Sarah. Allison took 3 weeks out of her summer to teach me how to trad climb, which like I am, forever indebted to her.
Right.
I was kind of seeing this guy who like, took me up some harder routes in Squamish at one point. But like, I sometimes just forget that even happened, and maybe that's selective memory. But I ended up kind of, as you do on the road in Squamish, specifically glomming on to this like group of young guys. And we kind of developed this like very, I think of like the Wendy and the Lost Boys kind of vibe, where it was like, I think I was 23 or 24. And they were all in like their early 20s, like 20 to 21, maybe even like 19 to 21. And we all kind of threw ourselves against the rocks in Squamish and like learned that way. And I wouldn't really say that any of them were like my mentors. It was more just like, we were like, oh, what do you want to go do today?
Right.
Oh, let's go do this. Like,
right.
Okay, let's do that. And then that happened for a little while. I would say like I kind of coasted into trad climbing for a long time, and just like I didn't really have any mentors. The people who have most recently affected my my trad climbing and just like my climbing in general have been my friends Brittany, who is here and she's going to give a keynote speech actually later, and then Mary, who I've done a lot of the Girls Gone Wide stuff with. Yeah, I mean, I over the course of like my time on the road, like I was learning and teaching myself and like having people give me little tips, dating a few guys, and I kind of lost my stoke for climbing about 2.5 years ago, and I got really freaked out. And I had ripped some gear while doing the Leaning Tower in Yosemite, and it just like kind of screwed with my head. And so I was like in a really bad place for about a year. Like I couldn't top rope, I couldn't do anything. And I didn't want to stop rock climbing, but I could not force myself to keep going. And I ended up right around the time of COVID, and this was like the peak of me not being able to rock climb because I was too freaked out. Like I was like literally like projecting 512s, and then I could not top rope 510 in the gym. I was like so afraid, and I was like double checking my knot and like triple checking everything and just like shaking in my boots. And like it kind of feels like the universe just kind of like stopped me in my tracks, because it was like, here's COVID. I lost all of my paying clients. The boy that I was living with in Reno at the time, he and I broke up, and it was just like, the unemployment insurance didn't come through, all this stuff. So I, drove out to Vidavoo in 2020. Like, 'cause I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have like a house. I was in my van. I couldn't stay with my mom. That wasn't safe for her. I drove out to Vidavoo, and I immediately dislocated my shoulder. And so I was like stuck in my van, no money, no job, no where to be in this pretty heinous place. Like, Vidavoo is great. I love it, but it's kind of insane.
That would have been March.
It was later than that, because I actually was rafting the Grand Canyon during the first 3 weeks of COVID. But it would have been, it was June 2020. And that's when I ended up hanging out with Brittany and Mary. And I got really into climbing photography because I couldn't do anything else. And so I spent a lot of time photographing Brittany on her projects and just like talking to her about what do you need mentally in order to be a good trad climber, And she said something to me that like it really stuck with me. And it's basically like, she said, sending is inevitable if you're willing to put in the work. And that really stuck with me. It was like, are you willing to put in the work? If you get up, if I walked up to Cobra Crack today and spent the rest of my life literally doing only that, I could probably send it.
And training for it.
Yeah, and training for it. Like that's,
doing all the things.
Yeah, like, but that was basically her point, is like, are you willing to do that? And I was kind of like, oh, like that's what it takes to be a rock climber, like to do anything really. Right. And at the time I wasn't really sending that hard because I was still terrified of everything about rock climbing. But I basically took that mentality to this like V4 boulder problem. in Vitavue, and I went to it every single day, and I failed, and then I'd come back, and Brittany would be like, it's, sometimes it's just going to work, and like, you're going to get it. You just have to keep trying. And eventually, I think it took me like 2.5 weeks of just going there almost every day and like resting. I sent it. And I really credit her with like the like kind of emotional support of like, yeah, you got this, which was really cool. So I would consider like Brittany to be like kind of a mentor. And then that same season, I spent a lot of time with Mary, and she's got a lot of tricks for climbing. Like she has all the tricks. Like she knows exactly like the tape that she's going to wear and the shoes that she's going to wear and the carabiners she's going to use and whether or not she's going to extend them and the sleeves and how she wears her hair. Like every single thing that she has on her body before she goes onto a rock climb is like, has been prepared and has a reason.
Right.
And that was another like tactic around rock climbing that I thought was really interesting for me specifically that I had never like considered before. And so she spent a lot of time being like, oh yeah, why don't you try a knee pad on this one? Or, oh, why don't you, tape your hands like this? And that's kind of where I changed my attitude around rock climbing.
I sort of like feel that philosophy that Mary has. I'm sort of a stickler, cross your T's, curl your S's sort of guy, and dot your I's and whatever to get everything sorted out that I think is going to be necessary. Even I always say you just sweat the small things.
Yeah.
But I climb with plenty of people who don't. So it's kind of a stylistic thing and get stuff done.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely more of I got to have everything sort of sorted out.
Yeah.
And I'll tape things exactly the way I want them. And yeah, so that's kind of interesting. I didn't know Mary well enough to get that deep when I interviewed her. But it was fun.
Yeah, I listened to hers last when she did it. It was great.
She was in a transition as well.
That was actually right around the time that we met.
Oh, okay.
Like right around that time, right. She was like moving out of her place in Moab.
Like literally, well, basically I kind of interrupted the moving.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, it sounds like you get to a point where you're, becoming your own climber, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you're always going to learn from other people, but what were your goals and things you were out there doing? And I guess in that question is, where did the offwidth come in?
I think like the initial like intoxicating joy of trad climbing that I felt was all around this like idea of sending and this idea of like on-sighting. And so when I started trad climbing, like the only thing that mattered is that I could just walk up to something and do it. And I on-sighted some, like I think I was starting to on-sight like, easy 511s in my first year. And so that was like, really empowering. I was like, yeah, I can do this. I'm good at this. Like I'm going to on-sight my first 512 this year. And that never happened. I did not do that. In my first year of trad climbing, I did not do that. But I began to hold myself to a standard that was mentally like untenable. And like I think a lot of people have this in trad climbing where like sending is super important. Yeah, like I think I had a really like unsustainable mental space around trad climbing where I was like, I just have to be able to like walk up and on-site. And if I can't on-site it, then I'm never going to do it again and I'm a failure.
Oh, so you were like rocking like circa 1974.
A little.
Stone Masters, like.
I did do a lot of rock climbing in Joshua Tree.
Right.
So
Eldo was famous for that too in the
really?
70s, yeah.
I've only climbed there once. And
you don't get to try again.
Scary.
You fell, you died. Basically, the rope was, they were simulating soloing. And so if you fell, you were metaphorically dead and you couldn't come and do that route again. So
Ever? Really?
Yeah.
If you fell, you were banned.
There's like 3 or 4 guys, including Jim Erickson, who were proponents of that.
Oh my God.
And they got very good at down climbing because they would get up there and if they didn't feel it, they would down climb the whole route.
Interesting.
So, but it's
that's pure.
Yeah, but it's interesting that, what was this, 4 years ago? 5 years ago?
When is it? What year is it? It's 2022. I think it was 2017, 2018.
So you had this attitude in 2017, 2018 of like...
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I honestly think it was something to do with like like I had really tied my self-worth to being okay at this sport.
Right.
And being new at it. Like, I think that because I was fairly good at it within my first year, it was kind of like an identity thing. And I had nothing to, we talked about how like I kind of exploded my life back home, and I was like, this is my life now, and I'm good at this, and this is who I am. And like, I need to be the best. And like, I had a lot of that kind of ego around, I need to be not just like passable, but like good. But also, I mean, I don't know, I did climb a lot in Joshua Tree and, ran with some crustier people. But yeah, I really do think it was an ego thing.
Okay.
It was really an ego thing. And I got a lot of validation for being good and like kind of acting like that at the time. And so that kind of reinforced it.
Oh,
just from,
she's
like,
old school.
Yeah, like just like from the people around me.
Yeah.
And, I think also like being a woman in trad climbing was kind of still a little bit unique. And so people were like, whoa, like that's cool. This girl can crush. But it also like really messed with my head and my self-worth and was not sustainable. And like, I developed a lot of like anxiety around it. And it was like when I failed and when I couldn't on site, it wasn't like, oh, I didn't do the climb. It was like, I'm a failure. Like I failed because I'm not good enough. And that's just shitty. And I really like, I see that in people because I do some clinics now. Like I see that energy in people or like, oh, I can't do this. Like I'm a failure. And I have spent a lot of time trying to separate myself from that mentality just because like, that's not good. Like that's not good for you. But yeah, like from there, that was where I started in trad climbing emotionally, mentally. And then I kind of like started doing harder and harder stuff, got into some big walling. I did a little bit of that, ripped my first piece of gear, and it just kind of like stopped me in my tracks mentally. And that was what I was talking about earlier, where I had this like extreme like downward descent mentally from climbing. And I got into offwidth climbing because you can try really hard, which is what I love about climbing. And you are almost always able to keep yourself on top rope by essentially bumping the cam in front of you.
Right.
And so like to my brain that was like freaking out about leading above gear, I was like, oh, like I can do this because this is safe. And I actually like, I don't know if I'm one of the few people, but I don't see people whip in offwidths very often, but I do whip out of offwidths because I feel pretty comfortable with my gear like right in front of me or right above me. And I guess that's not really a whip. Like if you were a sport climbing, you would not call that a whip, but like in trad climbing, whipping is a little bit different.
You sort of slither down onto them.
Yeah.
I'll ask you this question.
Yeah.
I ask all my offwidth people on here is, have you ever seen a person take a full feet above the piece whipper onto a big bro?
No.
Okay.
Nope. I've never seen it. I've never done it. I've heard of it. And I think it's BS.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's a lie.
Like not one of the ones we're talking about where you're like,
you're just
next
like, okay.
to it and you kind of slither down and you're like, okay, is it going to hold? But actual flying through the air.
No.
Wow.
No.
Yeah. I don't think it's ever happening. Maybe Craig Lubin did them.
Every big bro that I've ever seen placed or ever placed immediately pops out of the crack upon taking at the chains.
Yeah.
Because it just like the tension of the rope goes bing
Right.
and it just pulls it out.
Yeah. So I just think it's funny because I called out publicly for the video. I'm like, if it has happened, it's on video. So let's just see it.
I haven't seen it.
I know.
No. I have a friend who swears that he whipped on a gold big bro, and I'm like, all right, whatever.
How big's the gold one?
The gold ones are like bigger than the 8. They're like this big.
Big ones. Yeah, I know. Anyway, so I think it's pretty easy to kind of take shots at offwidthing because it up to this point, and this is gonna come back to you, like, or up to the point where you kind of engage with it, it was just like everything about it was like how gnarly it was. And if you hate yourself, like being off with her, and like there's Scarpelli like ready to punch people if they like get near his off with or like what. I mean, that whole thing was all mixed. I mean, all in northern. I was up in northern Colorado, somewhat close to Veda, and some of those folks were down there. And then I think it's funny because what you guys have done is sort of like just open it up as this more playful thing.
Yeah.
And, and even that, like, I like your admission that you like offwidth because I can basically top rope the whole thing with the gear above me, which is the opposite of the olden times of being like, it's heinous,
Yeah.
But, and I realize physically it's very difficult and it's very heinous, but I just think it's cool that you guys seem to have a much more sense of humor about it than it traditionally had.
Yeah. I mean, I came to the offwidth scene because like I needed it. And I think definitely getting into it initially, I really played into the whole like, hate yourself and climb hard. And it's all about drinking and pain. And the worse you are inside, the better you are out like as a climber. Right. And I get so tired of it now. Like I'm like, no, this is a fun, like legitimately offwidth is fun. Like I wish we're rebranding offwidth.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah. Because it's fucking fun.
If it's not conscious, that's what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's great because it's not just universally horrible thing to do,
Everyone gets their first like knee lock and is like, this isn't going anywhere.
Right.
This is awesome. And like, we like climbing, right? Like we love, finger cracks and sport climbing and everything because it is hard and you do try hard and then you succeed. And like, you're never trying harder than when you're in an offwidth. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that because I get so bored with the like, oh, you got to be like kind of fucked up to climb offwidth. It's like, no, like some of the nicest, most genuinely chill, cool people that I know are like some of the hardest offwidth climbers in the world. Like Danny and Ashley, they are normal people
right.
who are happy and love themselves, and they are also probably some of the strongest offwidth climbers in the world.
Well, yeah, and they kind of have their own vibe of it's like possible for everyone.
Yeah,
like you can learn how to do this.
I also just like I resist the idea that it's like this dark art too. I really do think that like the old guard in offwidth climbing spent a lot of time trying to like hide their secrets and make it seem like they were these like mysterious badasses. And it's like there's technique to it, like anything, like climbing finger cracks, elbows in, knees out kind of thing. Like it's the same thing with offwidth. Like there's just technique that's different than most other trad climbing.
Right. Yeah. And it's created kind of a rift between various offwithing clubs. It's I kind of think about them as like motorcycle clubs.
Yeah.
Like, the Hells Angels versus whoever the Hells Angels were again. I don't even know. That's the only one anyone ever knows. The Bloods and the Crips, maybe.
Yeah.
Or actually, let's keep it light. It's the
Gates in or gates out.
Yeah. Or the Jets and what's the
the Sharks and the Jets.
The Sharks and the Jets.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just, Andrew and I have enjoyed kind of watching it all go down. But so then Tom and Pete show up out of like a cellar and that actually was a real pivot too, when these two British guys come in out of a cellar, training in the cellar, and basically do a tour where they send almost all the hardest routes offwidth in like record time. Yeah. Which cracks two things. Cracks the offwidth myth a little bit, but it also cracks the Americans are like, it's our sport, crack climbing, in general. And offwithing has been seen even more so as like
this like hardcore American sport.
Yeah, Western American sport, And so that's when it like really was crumbling.
Yeah.
And the thing I think it did, which was good, is that it said, anybody can climb these.
Yeah.
No, we're great, but you can figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's not. And look at us. They never looked like they were having a horrible time, except for in the Sentry crack.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But also, like, I do want to acknowledge that, like, there was a time when, the people who were climbing offwidth back in the day were really pushing the envelope. And, like, some of the stuff that they did without modern cams and, on hexes and with, like, the shoe technology that they had, like, that is really impressive and hardcore. And, I don't want to like say that, they're all liars and they're all, pretending it's hard when like, the stuff they were doing was truly inspirational and truly unbelievable. Yeah. Like there are some offwidths that I do now that I'm like, I cannot believe that people did this on hexes, like, or, you know, on pieces of 2x4 hammered into the crack. Like that is truly bold and strong and just absolutely impressive. But yeah, like I do think things are changing. And like, I think climbing, I don't know, you talk to more climbers than I do, but like, I think climbing in general is becoming more like inclusive and open. And like, we want to bring people in and like, yeah, everyone can do this kind of thing.
Yeah, it totally is. But there's plenty of people for whom that's, you know, an issue.
Yeah.
Especially if it sort of knocks away some of the foundation of what we were talking about earlier, where your like whole identity is this climber, and you know your greatest achievements. I mean, it's the running joke. Your greatest achievement gets done by a 13-year-old gym rat. You know, it's like
you're on-sighted.
Yeah, it's like you gotta take that, and I mean, what are you gonna do with it? You're gonna get super crusty.
Yeah.
Sometimes, or you can get crusty for a while and then just get over it. I mean, it's hard not to be a little bit shot in your ego.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Your intellect should say that it was still rad when you did it then, because it was the top.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just takes the right personality to be able to go, oh, well, you know. And then you can keep your stories about how you did it on a 2x4.
Yeah.
But nobody's going to do it on a 2x4 now.
Yeah. I mean, that's impressive. Like,
yeah.
Pipeline or whatever that big thing is that is up in Squamish. I think like the first ascensionist only climbed it on hammered in 2x4s or something like that. And it's like, you know, a couple 100 feet off the deck. And like, that's really awesome. Like, you definitely can't take, like, that's not going to do anything. So you are at that point soloing, but I'm going to do Pipeline this summer, and I'm definitely going to bring my big cams.
Do big cams work in it?
I think so. Well, you know, maybe I'll bring a 2x4, but I have a 7, and I'm pretty sure that goes.
2x4s are really expensive right now, so.
Yeah. Yeah, well, easier to come by than a 7 and an 8. Those have been out of stock for
the big
2 years.
Yeah.
The big ones, yeah.
You don't have any?
I got a 7.
Oh, okay.
I got a 7 like in 2020, right before they went back out of stock.
Huh.
But I have friends with 8s, but I don't have an 8.
I wonder how many of those they made.
I think they only made like 150 or something.
Oh, really?
I mean, that's my assumption because they've been sold out for 2 years.
Right. Huh.
And then the supply chain got messed up, and it's hard to get that much metal.
Yeah, apparently, because they don't have much of anything. But
no.
Okay, well, let's place you in this whole internet van life thing as well. Because again, I think that's where I first saw you, and then first dismissed you. And then not like some cancellation, but I was like, oh, she's doing cool stuff, and I'm not gonna like pay too much attention to it, because there was like this kind of moment of like a lot of people like that.
Yeah,
it felt like and who's in my history of climbing, I know all about the flash in the pan and the and the self promoter and all those sorts of things. So it's like, for me and for the show, it's like I kind of keep waiting for something to rise up that's like more interesting. And I think your longevity with it is one thing that's, I mean, is interesting as anything, because you've been in here for a while. I mean, in and out.
Yeah, 6 years.
Yeah, that's a pretty good push, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about, I mean, what you decided to do with that image, and what you decided that you could, do professionally with
the van.
With the One Chick Travels.
Yeah. I think what came first, Instagram or the van life hashtag? The van thing, I think, I was young when I started doing it, and Instagram was like, another source of validation.
Mm-hmm.
And, I got all this serotonin from people being like, wow, your van is so cool. This is great. Like, I really appreciate it. And I did a lot of van life build out videos. So those got really popular on YouTube. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but it's basically just like I documented the process for how I built my van out. And I think that's kind of where the whole presence came from. Yeah, that was like another kind of like ego source of validation thing. I mean, how can it not be, right? Like, it's literally just like, here's my life and people telling me that they like it. And I think for a long time, the trad climbing and Instagram like fed into each other. Like, there was this kind of positive feedback loop of like, there's not a lot of women in trad climbing. I got to show people that I was trad climbing, and I felt really good about it. And like, I don't think it was really much deeper than that for a very long time. And then as I started to take trad climbing more seriously and living on the road more seriously, honestly, like the whole Instagram thing has really become a networking tool for meeting people that I'm genuinely interested in meeting. And I actually somewhat recently changed up my Instagram format, and like I'm pretty much posting like videos of me climbing and memes. And in a lot of ways, it was like a response to just kind of like, again, like the BS. Like I was looking at like what would be my legacy on the internet, and I was like, it's just photos of me talking about my feelings and talking about my van. And like, aren't we all sick of that? Like, aren't we all sick of like one more person living a beautiful life and talking about how hard it is? And I wanted to create value, and I wanted to have fun with it again. And so I was like, fuck it, it's memes now. And yeah, and like honestly, like it weeds out a lot of people. I do think that like I am not as prolific as some of my friends who do Instagram more seriously for like their business and their, you know, their work and their kind of personal image. And I do think I lose a lot of people because I have strong opinions, you know, and I make kind of edgy jokes. But I think that it keeps the people around that I want to connect with. Like I would rather lose people who aren't interested in me anyway. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's fun again. Like I'm having fun with this app, and that's the whole point, right? Like I can connect with people like you and be like, hey, we like trad climbing. Let's meet up at the Climbers Festival. But I can also like make a stupid joke and just say like, fuck it, we ball, you know, like just like, so yeah, I don't know. I'm allowed to curse on this podcast.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Okay, good. So yeah, I don't know. Is that kind of answering the question?
Yeah, well, I kind of was wondering too where it fits into your professional life and how you sustain your fabulous.
How do I pay for it all?
Life out here.
Yeah, I mean, I am a writer,
right?
So I write for Outdoor ProLink. I write for the local paper in Moab. I write for a couple different companies in Moab, like outdoor companies, like do their blog posts and stuff like that. Right now, I'm making a lot of money off of my T-shirt sales.
Nice.
And I make a very small amount of money from like YouTube ads and Instagram. They have a new feature where you get paid for reels. And then I do clinics with Mary twice a year. So I get a little bit from there. I do photography with She Moves Mountains. So I make some money from that. And I'm releasing some films. So I get like sponsorship money. Like I source, like research and reach out to people and say, hey, do you want to be a part of this film? And they give me a little bit of cash. So I am paying for it. I'm not living the rich and fabulous lifestyle of a popular Instagram influencer. Right. If that was the question.
I mean, I don't know how it works. I don't know. I mean, I know how it works. I just don't know what the income is from having a certain amount of followers. Yeah. You know, and how high it has to get for it to be actual money versus I think the tens of, 1/10,000th of a cent kind of money.
My friend Bo is probably eventually going to like make a career out of Instagram.
Okay. The mustachey guy.
The mustache. Yeah, he's got like 134,000. Yeah, with the mullet. Yeah. Yeah. I think he will eventually make a living off of Instagram. And that's just from sponsorships. Like he can eventually get to a point where he's asking people for like real money.
Okay.
I actually try not to do sponsorships on my Instagram. I don't really want to be like a influencer. And I like really do treat it like a networking tool. And so I guess from there I do make some money because I'll be like, I'll connect with a brand and I'll be like, oh, do you need a writer? Like, oh, can I write for your blog? Or, do you want to work together? So it's a little bit more like that. Essentially, I'm a freelancer who just like uses Instagram as a networking tool to reach people. I mean, I can't deny that it has brought me a lot of opportunities. Right. Like that would be naive for me to just say, I did it all on my own, like.
Well, yeah, but it's a tool that you're using. So you are still doing it on your own.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I always have the parental question.
Okay.
I don't know what your situation is with your folks, but this life seem a reasonable choice for you to them, or are they both around still?
Yes. My parents are still around. My dad's in Portland. I'm gonna go visit him after this festival. My mom is currently in Canada. And my parents were super supportive. Okay. I think they'd want me to be around more. Like they wish that I was physically closer to them, but they understand that like this is, this was always something I wanted to do. And I think that if I wasn't like making something of myself, they'd be a little bit more like, what are you doing? But
Yeah.
I've always been, writing and creating films and doing projects. And I think they're like, as long as it makes you happy.
Oh, well, that's good. That's nice. Those kind of parents are nice.
Yeah, I feel really lucky because I know a lot of my friends who like hit the road were like, yeah, my parents just want me to get a job and they're not happy with this. And, that can be challenging.
I mean, that's real common in the podcasting too.
Yeah.
Talking to people for whom their parents were not exactly pleased that they didn't finish law school or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, aside from the career end of things, we were talking earlier about being a woman on her own on the road. Wasn't that common through the early part of my climbing career.
Yeah.
Occasionally happened. Someone truly like going place to place alone was unusual, and it's not unusual now, but when you started it was still a growing thing. Well, how did they feel about that? I mean, a typical mom or dad would be like, you can't go out there and like these places by yourself.
On your
like
own.
Yeah, did they have any sort of safety concerns, or they felt like you could take care of yourself?
Well, I think I kind of like did some like exposure therapy with that because I actually spent 4 months in India alone when I was 20, right before I hit the road. And I think that was much more stressful for them.
Sure. And maybe for you?
Yeah, it was a little bit more stressful for me. I have some good stories from that time period in my life. But yeah, I spent some time alone traveling abroad. And I think that, my parents are a little bit more like, she's going to do whatever she's going to do. Like, let's just hold on and tell her that we love her kind of thing. Funnily enough, like most of the concern that I get from people would be from like friends or friends of like friends' parents would be like, are you okay? Like, are you doing this? And honestly, like I don't spend that much time alone on the road.
Right.
And if you've done that, you've dirtbagged, like it's like, you're alone in your vehicle, but like, right now I'm parked with like 5 people that I have been climbing with for the last 3.5 years. And like, we're going to spend, the next couple of weeks together. So it's like, or I guess actually I'm leaving on Monday, so we're not, but like I know all these people really well and I'm not alone in any source of the word. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, cause I think about it even, I mean, well, let me say this, because that was really what was like, at least when I started climbing, it was still in an era that, a dude could just do it and nobody batted an eyelash. But if a woman was doing it, it was like, oh my God, you're going to get picked up and raped and all these different things, and that specter hasn't gone away.
Yeah.
But now more women are doing it. But it was just unfair in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Except for the fact that statistically,
yeah, I mean, like,
it was more likely that
you got to be smart.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so it wasn't like without unfounded fear, and it still is.
Oh, for sure.
Certainly, guys can get robbed and shot and things like that. But there's this whole other level with women. I mean, have you been out there with the good and the bad in terms of that?
For sure.
Have you felt situations that you were like, okay, maybe I should move out of this. Maybe I should keep an eye on that, or what are you doing in terms of that when you're out there?
Well, I mean, I've been through the good and the bad, like any woman who's been on the road on her own. And I mean, like I have a restraining order against someone in the climbing community for, like stalking reasons. And yeah, I mean, like, I don't like have any like specifically gory stories or whatever that I even want to get into, but I think that it's an inherent risk, but honestly, this is actually kind of a privilege on my part. I do live in a metal box that has a lock on it that I can drive away at any point. And so a lot of times when I have felt like uncomfortable or, like, oh, this is a weird vibe, I literally just like shut my door, turn on my car, and I drive away to a new place.
Right.
And I think like that is very different from a lot of women just like in life who deal with like, misogyny and sexism and, the fear of abduction. They have like routines and patterns and people they see all the time. And like, statistically, it's actually a lot easier to like abduct someone if you know where they're going to be. Right. And so like in a lot of ways, living in a van, I think actually has empowered women to travel because they're like very, very safe. Like unless you're willing to like take a hammer to my window as I'm driving away from you and like, you know, do something like that's pretty intense. Like that's a lot of escalation very quickly, you know?
Right.
But, you know, it's funny you mentioned that because when I first hit the road, I thought that I was going to be the only woman. Like I very much had this perception that it was going to be me and a bunch of dudes. And honestly, I went to Indian Creek and there were dozens of women in their vans. And I actually I have a One Chick Travels series on my YouTube channel, which is literally interviews with solo female travelers that I've met on the road. And like, I talk about their build outs and I talk about how cool they are and what they're doing for money because everybody wants to know. And like, it's pretty cool and like pretty empowering for me to be able to like meet with these women and be like, wow, you guys have some like amazing stories.
Yeah. It's like you guys, it's like there was a era of a few years and then you were all coming from different directions and then about the mid-aughts, it was like, okay, they're here. And literally 10 years before that, well, and also the Sprinter changed a lot.
The Sprinter changed a lot. Yeah.
So, and that wasn't around. I mean, you could have gotten a Econoline, but when you can't stand up in your rig, it's just not as good.
No.
But and it's funny how I was just thinking how like the Sprinter just made it more classy.
Yeah.
If you were in an Econoline, there'll all be jokes about your like pedo van or whatever. For some reason, like
the Sprinter.
A Sprinter, maybe because it originally had Mercedes on it or whatever.
It's classy.
Yeah, it's classier. It's like you're allowed to get away with it. But yeah. So I mean, what about when you sort of talking with these women and yourself? Like, I mean, are any of these women packing heat or like, you know? I mean, does anybody go that far as to have, if not guns, you know, sort of a heavy mace, stuff like that?
I mean, I think mace is a bad idea in a small enclosed space.
Yeah, you get yourself.
Just because you get yourself too. But I do know some women who travel with guns. Most women, though, travel with big dogs.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the thing that I had never really considered when I left. Honestly, I didn't think about it much, like the whole like danger thing. I was just kind of like, I'll just drive away if I need to, you know? But yeah, a lot of women that I have interviewed travel with big dogs. And like, that's kind of the deterrent because you're much less likely to mess with someone if they have like a freaking Rottweiler or even a German Shepherd, you know? But really like, you know, and this speaks to the climbing community, but like there's the safety in the climbing community, right? Like, you know, we're in numbers. I would so much rather park in any, you know, gym parking lot in any state in this country than like a Walmart parking lot. Right. Because like if I go to literally any gym in the world, probably with my van, I'll be like, oh yeah, there's other people like me sleeping here as well. And if something happens, like, you know, I can honk my horn loudly or I can, you know, bang on the doors of people and be like, help. And that would even be extreme. Like I can't imagine something like that happening, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure it does. It has. Like there's like the Gabby Petito thing. That girl was a van lifer and, you know, she was killed by her boyfriend.
I think that's probably more the case, those things as opposed to just some random psycho.
Yeah.
It's usually emanating from, you know, the enemy is within, as it were. I mean, so much of that becomes domestic stuff. Did they ever catch that dude?
I think that he killed himself and then they caught him.
Or they found him.
They found his body.
Like, had it been eaten or something?
He was, in like a glade in Florida or something like that. But
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's not my perspective. But I did the same thing. I was a high school kid who wanted a van. And this would have been in 1987. I think I got this van.
Yeah.
And because of influence of a friend who was an outdoorsy person and he had a van.
Yeah.
So it was like way pre-van life. But then, you know, I was 19 when I left. It drove out to Colorado and stuff. And like a 19-year-old boy, I'm just like, I'm not like concerned at all about danger.
About anything.
Yeah. You know, I remember my mom was like, you know, sleep at, oh no, I was like, I'm going to sleep at some rest stops. And my mom was like, no, I watch those shows. Like people get abducted from rest stops all the time. You know?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, Mom. But then I stayed at this rest stop. I think I was in Kansas because I was going the low route because it was winter. And sure enough, like I'm in the back of my van. I wake up and there's like flashing lights.
Oh God, yeah.
And I like sit up and like get through the windows all cold.
Yeah.
And I'm all mummified. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's like in the wintertime. And I like look out, and sure enough, there's this car that was a little ways behind me. There's these two cars like blocked it in front and back, 2 cop cars.
Yeah.
Guys on the hood with the gun, like pointing the dude. And, and he hadn't, they just flipped lights on to wake him up. And they're like, attention. And they're like, keep your hands on the wheel. Keep your hands on the wheel.
Oh my God.
Like, dudes have all their guns out. And I'm just like peeking out my back door.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so funny.
Oh my God.
And so they pulled him out of the car, cuffed him,
Oh my
put
God.
him in.
For sleeping, or was he doing something else?
No, he was somebody they were after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like the Yosemite Rangers, like, dude, you got to leave. It was like full on cops.
Yeah.
And then, they took him away. So he was clearly some sort of felon they were after. But it just proved my mom's point.
Yeah.
Like I was,
So did you
knows?
stop sleeping at rest stops?
No, but I also I was armed, so it was all right. But I mean, it's like, who knows? Maybe it's like some serial killer.
Yeah, maybe.
That was like just getting a little rest before he came and cut my head off.
Murdered you, yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, but it is fascinating because the what I was getting at is that a woman traveling alone, I don't care if it's in her van or on an airplane or in another country, whatever. Has all these other considerations.
For sure.
Yeah. And I've always kind of been curious about who's like real lax about them and who's real serious about them when they're out here.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm lax about them. I just think it speaks more to like the, resiliency and like the badassery of the women that you see, because like, the average dirtbag woman is, already going through more hurdles than like the average dirtbag guy.
Right.
And so like, I think it's incredibly powerful and like inspiring when I see women just like crushing hard, living on the road, doing their own thing. Cause like, they got to that point, with so much more to go than just like, the average Joe doing it. And not to say that they're not impressive too, but just like, that's what inspires me.
Yeah. I mean, we all have wherever we grew up, we have our tracks that we're supposed to be on.
Yeah.
And we have to break those tracks.
Yeah.
And do. Oh, there she is.
Hey, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Hey, Sam.
What's going on?
I didn't realize I was interrupting the Enormocast. Oh, my bad.
Okay.
You gonna keep that in there? Or?
Of course.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna stare at you intently.
Happy birthday, Sam. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Sam just turned 30.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
We're all turning 30 this year. I did it first. Sam did it next. Kaya's next.
I'm on the chopping block to turn 30. Bye, guys.
Yeah, so I guess what I was going to say is like, there's all these paths that you're supposed to take. And the super common theme I've heard from all climbers is that somewhere they realize like that wasn't me. Like I couldn't do the either professional track or school track or sports track. But then I think women have all that same stuff, but then they also have mom and getting married is sort of more like pressure on you, even though it takes a guy or a girl if need be. Giving birth. And like if you're religious, there's been more pressure on them to do something else. And maybe that was sort of the lag, not just in the band life, but in climbing in general. In terms of what we're looking at now, which is you mentioned being in Indian Creek and feeling like there was just loads of women. And I honestly, I don't have statistics for it, but I feel like weekends there are 50-50 these days.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
And that has even improved in like, I've been going to Indian Creek for 5 or 6 years and like that's even improved upon like since I've started going there. I feel like I climb now with like strong female trad climbers in abundance. And like before it was more just like me and a few people, which I think is great. I'm psyched on it. And I also live in my own little bubble because I'm constantly like on the hunt for female trad climbers. Like if I see you and I'm like, hey, let's go rock climbing. I'll like throw a rock at you from across a parking lot and drag you out with me.
Well, I think it's been like you guys have benefited from that because I think you asking women to go climbing with them is much more effective than guys asking guys to go climbing with them.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely a supportive, I was you recently, I'll help you kind of thing. That's awesome. And you guys, now that there's more of you, you're really benefiting from it.
Yeah.
And obviously if a guy asks a girl to go climbing, there's maybe some sort of like, why does he
Is it a date? Is it not a date?
So, yeah, the date, not a date thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the fact that you can wander around and see groups of women means you get to go climbing. I mean, has anyone ever said no?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And I mean, a group of guys, if you walked up for other reasons, they wouldn't say no.
Yeah.
So,
no one's ever said they didn't want to go climbing with me.
and it's funny because I talk to people all the time who are like, can I find partners? I'm like, if you walk up and ask, you will find partners.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Sometimes, I mean, getting into like a sport duo and like fucking it up into a threesome is it's kind of rude to even do that.
Yeah.
So, but as far as group climbing, the way it goes on down there at the creek, let's jump in. We're all going.
I mean, I was climbing Castleton one time, and the party below me picked up one from the party below them.
Oh, really?
So it was like we were on top, and they were climbing up, and they were like a party of 3 with 2 ropes. And I was like, how did this happen? And they're like, oh, yeah, this guy's like friends left him at the top of pitch 1 because they didn't want to keep going.
Oh, really?
So he just like hitchhiked with the next group. And I was like,
cool.
Yeah, rock climbing,
right
you know.
All right, let me just finish with this.
For sure.
Van life.
Give
me the goods. Give me the strikes and the gutters. The goods and the bads. And sometimes, well, maybe those things are the same thing depending on the day.
The goods are, my bed is so comfortable and it's pretty warm in the winter. That's rad. I love having people in my van. I love having the ability to stand up and cook. I love being able to lock my van and drive away. The bads, I've dropped 4 transmissions out of this bad boy. I have literally been through it all when it comes to like horror stories with mechanics. And getting, breakdowns, cops called on me, getting pulled out of my van in the night by police, ranger, like all the things. That's all happened. And all of it sucks. But yeah, I mean, like it's the good and the bad. It's what you get when you're on the road. I mean, like, yeah, there's things that are better about sleeping in a tent because you're lighter and you can hitchhike and go quickly. But, when it rains, I have a nice dry place to hang out. I get a lot of people, actually probably the most annoying thing is I get a lot of people who are like, oh, did your dad buy you this van? I'm like, fuck no. Fuck you. I built my van. I bought it myself with my own money.
Did you get it used?
Yeah. I got it used. And I got really lucky. This thing was only $11,000 when I bought it.
Right.
Which is crazy because nowadays, like a used Sprinter, like even with nothing in it, it'll be like in the $10,000, $20,000. Like they're crazy expensive now. But okay, I only had to pay for one of the transmissions because they were all warranties.
Oh,
so
good.
I did have to shell out all of my savings. I literally, when my transmission dropped out, I ended that mechanic experience with $700 to my name.
Oh.
And $10,000 student loans. And I was just like, all right, here we go. Got to figure it out. So most of my van life time, I was extremely poor.
And then being a internet figure, how do you sort of sort through the good and the bad there? And give me a little bit of idea of like the percentage that's like harping on climbing versus giving you props for climbing.
Yeah.
And then, obviously there's going to be some trolls, like real creepy trolls.
For sure.
As well. So what's everybody has like a way to do it. I talked to Jenny Fisher about this as well. And how does it affect you?
I think it used to affect me a lot. I was actually thinking about this the other day because I remember I posted a video on YouTube years ago about like the full build out. And it's like a time-lapse video of the whole thing going from nothing to completely built out. And I remember being so proud and being like, this is amazing. I made something great. I, just built this van out. And someone commented like, this is shit. You're going to tear it out within a year. And it I just remember it cut me so deep at the time. And I was just like destroyed. And I just obsessed over it. I thought about it. Even to the point where a year later to the day, I like went back and commented, responded and was like, I'm still living in my van, and like, it's just like, it used to bug me. Now I think people are better at self-selecting. I think making myself a little bit less palatable is good. Like with, like the bad jokes, the memes,
right.
Strong political opinions. Like I think people unfollow just like out of habit. Like they're like, I don't want to deal with this stuff.
Right.
And so, part of like the presence that I curate is to like keep people that are going to be shitty to me away. Cause I'm going to be like, oh, you're just going to expect this steady flow of like, extremely leftist memes.
Mm-hmm.
And the other half is that I'm extremely liberal with the block button. I don't tolerate any sort of bad vibes from anyone. I don't care who it is. Like, you could be, you could be a famous rock climber. You could be someone who's like, would be an amazing connection for me to have. But if I like have a slight, just the smallest bad vibe, like, I'll just block you. Because we look at our phones all day long, and I literally just look at it and feel like a sense of shame about everything. Like, I'm like, oh, the environment, women's rights, the Supreme Court, like everything. It's just like, wow, this feels bad. This feels bad. This feels bad. And I don't have time for that on Instagram, like, or in my extended social network, which is, in the social media platforms that I use. So I'm very liberal with the block button. And I just kind of developed a thick skin over time.
Right.
I would rather give my attention to the people who are appreciative of my work and my life and the things that I have to say. And so I don't really engage with people who are shitty. If someone says something shitty to me, I'll be like, this is shitty. And then I move on and say, like, respond to the person right after them who said something really positive. And I'll be like, that's the person I'm going to give my attention to.
So another question, I just had James Lucas on.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, like, even earlier in this, I was like, she's sort of like the girl James Lucas.
Yeah. Wow.
Just like the life and what you observe and what you're into. And like when you talked about leaving because like, yeah, we built this van, then we broke up, and then I lost my job, and then I like that whole thing was, I mean, literally what James and I just talked about.
Oh, really?
In his life. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
But we also talked about dating. Yeah. And this is, sort of voyeuristic because I'm 51 and have a kid and I'm basically married. But like, is that an important part of this life to you? Meeting someone, or are you just like, are you with someone now? I
have a partner.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, dating is interesting. I've dated a lot on and off the road. I had a partner that moved in this van. We broke up. I traveled solo. I dated guys in their own vans.
There's all these permutations.
Yeah, the permutations. Yeah,
I dated a guy who owned a Civic, so we were mostly in our van, but he could at least go drive his to the crag.
Really, the cruxiest bit is how tall they are.
Oh, right.
Because my bed is only 5'9" long, so if they're taller than that, it's going to be difficult for them to lie down in it.
You're like, I really like this guy, but
he's kind of tall.
He's going to be diagonaling, and then he's going to be over my shit.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, it's dating in a van or dating in the dirtbag community is basically dating in the city, except incredibly small.
Right.
My friend Brittany said to me once that as a woman in the climbing community, the odds are good, but the goods are odd. And that really stuck with me. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm 29, so I feel like I'm in that stage of life where people are like, so are you going to get married and have kids? And I'm literally just like, I don't know.
Right.
I'm making a movie about climbing. I'm trying to write a book. I want to climb this rock, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I was thinking about too, is because truly everybody's transient, not just physically, but most everybody ain't doing this for the rest of their lives. And in fact, I would sort of warn against that, as we have many times.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got, I don't know, I've thought about it that way of like, okay, so you're dating your other van person and they have dreams of, oh yeah, I am going to go back to school, and oh yeah, I'm going to start, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like it would be hard to, with the limited selection and with everybody so scattered, to get something that wasn't just kind of for fun.
Yeah.
But then I guess, you fall in love and then one person changes dreams.
I mean, I think it's hard.
But everybody's also so fucking independent, that's the whole point of it.
Climbers are independent, and that creates a lot of like chaos and change because each one of you is like, oh, well, I want to do this and I have my projects, and like, well, I have my projects. I want to do this. Like, okay, bye.
Right.
I guess I'll see you next season.
Right.
And then you're like, come back next season. And you're like, oh, I'm with this guy now. And they're like, oh no, and it's, I think it's painful. I think, you write a sitcom about all the like dirtbag relationships, models and styles that are out there.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I've had my heart broken. I've broken in some hearts. I have some friends, consoling people for like, oh, my girlfriend's now dating someone else on the circuit. He climbs harder than me, like, that kind of thing.
That is funny. Yeah. It's a little micro, like, a soap opera kind of style.
But honestly, when the relationships get too dramatic, you just pick up your van and drive to the next crag.
It's the same as when a creep shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
Either way, lock the doors and drive away.
Any conflict, lock the doors, drive away.
That's exactly how you deal with problems. You just drive away from them.
Yeah.
That's perfect. All right, well, let's finish with the
okay.
You can promo.
Yes.
The Girls Gone Wide.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first Girls Gone Wide came out last summer, and it's about me and Mary and Sam and Sadie climbing hard offwidths in Vidavoo, Wyoming. It's great. It was the work of my life. It was really hard to do, and I'm very proud of it. You can see it on YouTube. Just type in Girls Gone Wide. Either like Kaya Lindsay or One Chick Travels, and you'll find it. And then tonight at the International Climbers Festival in Lander, Wyoming, I am premiering the second Girls Gone Wide, which is about me and Mary climbing this wide crack in the center of the Grand Canyon called Screaming Sky Crack, which is 38 miles of hiking, 20,000 feet of elevation gain and loss, and 4 pitches of somewhat wide rock climbing. So it's mostly a hiking trip, but it's really fun. It's really beautiful. It's probably some of the most beautiful footage I've ever had the opportunity to take. And it's really fun.
Cool.
And that'll be premiering tonight.
And there's other merch.
Yes, there are shirts. There are Girls Gone Wide t-shirts at www.onechicktravels.com/shop. And that's ONE1. And then I have Girls Gone Wide shirts, and I have a Woman's Place is on the Face shirts as well. And it is a picture of Half Dome. So Woman's Place is climbing the face. Yeah, they're both on my website, and they're on my Etsy store. I just figured out how to set up Instagram shopping, so you might be able to even buy them from there. But yeah. And no one listening to this will be going to the International Climbers Festival yet because it won't be out. But I am selling t-shirts at the booth today. So
yeah,
but that doesn't matter.
That happened
you can
in the
take
past.
that whole part out.
No, it's
that happened in the past.
We like to play with podcast time travel on this thing. People will listen to this for all time, and they will regret having missed you at the trade fair, and that's what we want.
Exactly.
Yes.
2022.
You regretted it, Mr. 2029.
Future you. Regret.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Kaya for sitting down, allowing me into her van. She actually gave me probably the most comfortable seating, the spin-around front seat of the Sprinter. Nice drop in from Mary, her other Girl Gone Wide. Anyway, check her out, One Chick Travels on Instagram, and just Google Girls Gone Wide. You'll find those videos and her website. Actually, if you do that, if you do Google Girls Gone Wide, Google's just going to change it to Girls Gone Wild, and then you're going to dip into that whole shit show. So make sure it says wide. And then when it says, did you mean Girls Gone Wild? You say, no, I meant wide. But of course, that's the pun they're making, so it goes with the territory. And make sure to go over to www.onechicktravels.com/shop. Get a t-shirt. They're really cool t-shirts. I think she's got stickers. Support whatever she's doing. She's out there making it happen. She's like a champion that we've sent forth to live our dreams, to suffer, to find glory, and to defeat evil so that the rest of us can continue living our menial little lives as cogs in the system. We are going to go out a little bit differently today. I wanted to record some music with Kaya when we were in Lander, but we didn't get around to it. We ran out of time. We ran out of bandwidth. So instead, she sent me a video of her playing a song called In My Mind by Amanda Palmer. It's a video recorded on her iPhone. So I took that single track of her and her ukulele, gussied it up a little bit, maybe to its detriment. She recorded it on a porch somewhere. And at one point, it appears that she's being attacked by a flock of ravens or crows or something. But I assure you, she and or the crows were not harmed during the making of this song. So have a listen. And while you're listening, why don't you check your knots?
years from now, I'm 120 pounds. And I never get hungover because I will be the picture of discipline. Never fucking up anything. I'll be a good defensive driver. And it's funny, I imagined I would be that person now. It does not seem to have happened. Maybe I've just forgotten how to see. But I'm not exactly the person that I thought I'd be. In my mind, I'm all over here now. I'm becoming control somehow. And I never lose my wallet because I will be the picture of discipline. And remind me what state I'm in. I'll be a good defensive driver. It's funny, I imagine I would be that person now. It does not seem to have happened. I've just forgotten how to see. I'm not exactly the person that I thought I'd be. And in my mind, when I'm old, I'm beautiful, planting tulips and vegetables. I'm mindfully watch over, not like me now. I'm so busy with everything that I don't look at anything. I'm sure I'll look when I'm older. It's funny how I imagined I could win this fight. That's not what I want. If that's what I wanted, I'd be giving up somehow. How strange to see that I don't want to be the person that I thought I'd be. And in my mind, I imagine so many things that aren't really happening. And when they put me in the ground, I'll start pounding the lid, saying I haven't finished yet. I still have a tattoo to get that says I'm living in the moment. It's funny, I imagined I would be that person now. That's not what I want. If that's what I wanted, I'd be giving up somehow. How strange to see that I'm exactly the person that I want to be.